In this video, I'm going to be guiding you through Chapter 24, Government Intervention. Firstly, we'll look at government policies to deal with externalities, and these include taxation, subsidies, fines, government regulations, and pollution permits. First of all, we have taxation, as this reduces the external cost of both production and consumption. This is a key deterrent for suppliers or firms, as it has the most direct impact as it increases the production costs and forces the price to increase. Higher production costs will usually mean higher prices for the consumer, and the result of this is a fall in demand for the firm's products and therefore a reduction in the overall pollution. The advantages of taxation is that it reduces the external cost of consumption by making harmful products more expensive, and therefore fewer third parties will be negatively affected by smoke or any of the externalities produced. The disadvantages, however, taxes that are imposed on businesses are additional costs that will constrain businesses, and the result of this is that the business might close, which will cause job losses, and this will be an expense to the government. The reduction of profits will mean that the firms will have less money to invest and expand, which will discourage them from setting up new ventures, which will increase economic growth. Next, we have a subsidy, and this is when governments offer financial rewards, such as subsidy, to give to firms as an incentive to reduce external costs. Governments will also give subsidies to firms that generate a positive external benefit to stimulate more demand. An example could be solar panels. Governments around the world were giving subsidies to solar panel producers to lower their cost of production in the hopes that they would make more. And the reason for this is because solar panels are the component for renewable energy, which is part of the government's goals. An advantage of a subsidy is that it promotes more of the production of said good. Another example will be that subsidies to university students in the form of a grant will encourage more people to enter higher education. The benefits of this is that more of the percentage of the population will be educated, and therefore the productive potential will increase. The disadvantages, however, is that there is an opportunity cost involved, as the money spent on these subsidies would be spent effectively on other government projects, such as infrastructure, health, and supporting the poor. Next, we move on to fines. In some countries, a strict system of fines is used to reduce external costs, and these penalties are imposed directly to the firms who damage the environment the most. This can apply to both large corporations and citizens alike. The advantages of this is that it is a significant deterrent for firms and individuals for polluting the environment, such as discharging wastes and chemicals into the rivers. Or they can be used effectively at a local level to reduce pollution in tourist spots. The disadvantages, however, that really profitable firms will treat the fine as a simple cost to their business. So these firms will continue to pollute as they expect to be fined regardless. Furthermore, it is really hard to actually monitor these firms, as the government will have to have provisions in place to ensure that these hundreds of thousands of firms are not breaking the law. In the case for government regulations, they might want to pass more legislation to protect the environment due to global warming concerns, and many countries have laws directed at businesses to aim to reduce the external cost of production. The advantages of this is that regulations will allow governments to actively monitor and control pollution levels. And having the law being laid down is to safely manage polluted land, abandoned mines, national parks, air quality, and waste. The disadvantages, however, it's not very easy to make firms to obey them, as very large firms will have an army of lawyers and they are resourceful enough to navigate these regulations without breaking the law. And the very powerful firms are well-resourced multinationals which may be able to lobby the government and change the rules by simply throwing money at the problem. In the case for pollution permits, these are documents that businesses have the right to discharge a certain amount of polluting material. For example, if a pollution permit says you are allowed to pollute 15 metric tons into the atmosphere, that is exactly how much you are allowed to pollute. And for instance, if the business only requires 5 metric tons, the business is allowed to sell the other 10 metric tons on the open market to other businesses. The advantages of this that it creates a financial incentive in the market for companies to introduce new technology that reduces the pollution. And the reduction of pollution means that they don't need this permit anymore, which means they can sell it and make some money from it. So clean companies can then sell their unused permits for cash. The disadvantages of this, however, is that there could be too few or too many permits to businesses, as it is very difficult for the government to judge what is an appropriate amount of pollution permits to give out. And the cost of enforcing these permits are quite high. Businesses are also able to disguise their actual waste levels of pollution using their abundant resources that they have available to them. And now we move on to government regulation on how businesses compete. It is always in the government's interest to promote competition and to prevent anti-competitive practices, which is disadvantageous to the customer. They encourage small firms to start up, in which they give advice, lower taxes, and maybe a subsidy too. They want to lower the barriers to entry for more firms so they can join the market, and introduce anti-competitive legislation to protect consumer interests. Governments will always aim to limit the monopoly power. This prevents the exploitation of consumers. Can you imagine that there was only one supermarket available in your country? And if that's the only place that you can buy groceries, the supermarket will have the ability to triple the price and you can do nothing about it. And due to this, the government will appoint bodies and develop and enforce anti-monopoly legislation. They will have watchdogs to monitor the activities and control prices, and these watchdogs are able to issue fines if quality standards are not met. Remember, the monopoly is able to increase price and reduce quality, as this will significantly boost their profit margins in the short, medium, and long term. Government regulation is also there to protect consumer interests. As consumers like us, we expect good quality, safe products, and at a fair price. And there are some firms that are able to exploit the customer by price fixing or market sharing. Firms can be very anti-competitive by raising the barriers to entry through very high advertising spending, which will make the consumer think that the quality of their products are the best. And due to this excessive advertising, this creates imperfect information for the consumer, and also laws are there to prevent false claims and selling unfit goods. For example, in 2015, Volkswagen was a part of an emissions scandal widely known as Dieselgate. This essentially tricked the consumer into thinking that their engines were very environmentally friendly. But in reality, it was polluting like any other normal engine would. But what they were doing is that they were claiming far less CO2 levels compared to what actually was emitted. Governments are also there to regulate and control the mergers and acquisitions for businesses as they monitor mergers and takeovers to ensure markets remain competitive. If a government believes that the merger or takeover would be anti-competitive, they will block it. And they will let deals go ahead if conditions to preserve competition are met. For example, Nvidia planned to acquire ARM, but global regulators blocked the deal because it would have given Nvidia the control over the essential blueprint technology that its own competitors rely on to build their products. It would be the equivalent of a creator of a game engine being bought by one of the teams playing the game. This would let them cheat and win and kill all fair competition. And moving on to government intervention in the labor market. Governments can intervene in the labor market by setting a minimum wage through legislation. This means that employers will have to pay a certain amount of money to any employee that is working for the firm. Any lower than this will be illegal. This is highly beneficial for low-paid workers, as this reduces inequality, and employers will face penalties for paying below the minimum wage. I hope that helped. I hope you guys have a good day. Bye-bye.